back to this. Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 2, stage is set. We have Hamlet's father, who's appeared in ghost-like form to Hamlet's friends, but and that's the opening of the play. And the setting is, again, a political stage, which is actually outside the contours of where the play is going to take place. Whereas Macbeth, it's within the kingdom there that the war took place to begin with, because remember, it was a rebellion in the ranks, and it was a civil war, as it were, that broke out and has been suppressed. Here it's a foreign war that has domestic consequences. And something else has happened, which is not even mentioned thus far, which is that the father's died, and his mother's remarried his uncle, his father's brother. And that's deeply troubling, but that has not yet really been broached in Act 1, Scene 1. So let's go to Act 1, Scene 1. Act 1, Scene 2, rather. Scene 2, the flourish of the trumpets, because you're in the royal court. And enter Claudius, king of Denmark, Gertrude the queen, the council, Polonius and his son Laertes, Hamlet with others, among them Voltaman and Cornelius, who are of no significance whatsoever. And we begin with, how do I get rid of this here? Is that going to do it, or is that going to ruin it? That's going to ruin it. I will stick with that. The king, suitably, though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death. Now, this is going to shock the audience, because we've heard mention of Hamlet, but now it's Hamlet, our dear brother, and you're disoriented if you haven't seen the play before or haven't read it. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be green, and that it us befitted to bear our hearts in grief, and our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow of woe. Yet so far hath discretion fought with nature, that we with wisest sorrow think on him together with remembrance of ourselves. The king is dead, long live the king. We have to move on. Therefore, our sometime sister, now our queen, the imperial jointress to this warlike state, have we, as 'twere with a defeated joy, with an auspicious and a dropping eye, with mirth in funeral and with dirge in marriage, in equal scale weighing delight and dole, taken to wife. Extraordinary thing. The comedy and the tragedy all at once, the marriage and the funeral, mixing. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Some similarity there. There's a mixture of things that don't fit together. We don't have marriage clothes. We don't have funeral clothes at a marriage. You're not supposed to wear black to a wedding. I've seen brides wear black. Crazy stuff these days. No sense of symbolism and so forth. Some of it's cultural, of course, but associations and so forth. But there's a confusion in how they even ought to comport themselves in public. But because he married his brother's wife, there's all sorts of things going on here. And now he's in political power, furthermore. And with a dirge of marriage, an equal scale weighing delight and dole, taken to wife, nor have we herein barred your better wisdoms, which have freely gone with this affair along. For all, our thanks. Now follows that you know young Fortinbras, holding a weak supposal of our worth, that is, our with the royal we, not judging me to be much of a king, or thinking by our late dear brother's death, our state to be disjoint and out of frame, co-leagued with this dream of his advantage, he hath not failed to pester us with message, importing the surrender of those lands lost by his father, with all bands of law, to our most valiant brother. So much for him. Now, for ourself and for this time of meeting, thus much the business is. We have here writ to Norway, uncle of young Fortinbras, who, impotent and bedread, scarcely appears of this his nephew's purpose, to suppress his further gait herein, in that the levies, the lists, and full proportions are all made out of his subject. And we here dispatch you, good Cornelius, and you, Voltaman, for bearers of this greeting to old Norway, giving to you no further personal power to business with the king, more than the scope of these delated articles allow. Hands over the paper, farewell, and let your haste command your duty. And then they, in that and in all things, will we show our duty. We doubt it nothing, heartily, farewell. So, dispatches them with the idea that the letter that he gives to Norway, although he's bedridden and not able to act, so will somehow be able to check his nephew. I'm not quite sure what it is about the state of Norway that the brother inherits at that point without marrying. But in Denmark, it would have fallen to Hamlet. And this is as in Hamlet the younger. He would have been the king. And at least I think that's the case. And the fact that his brother has married his mother is part of the complexity of this. And what exact state of succession is there in Denmark for a king? When a king dies, to whom does the throne pass? Does it pass to his firstborn son, or does it pass to his brother? What would be the case in England? Son, exactly. Doesn't go to the brother. They're out forever. It'll go to his firstborn son. Or daughter, if there's no son. That's how it will work. In Norway, for some reason, it's fallen to his brother, who's bedridden. So he's called the king. So different. So you can see the foils there, not only in Fortebras and in Hamlet, but also in Norway and Denmark. And remember, the kings are just naming themselves after the countries here. Expecting him to be able to act accordingly, and of course, as we know, that he will not do so. But we doubt nothing. Heartily farewell. Now they gone, and now the king speaks to Laertes. Laertes is the son of Polonius, who's the king's chief advisor, and the brother of Ophelia, who we've not yet met, but is young Hamlet's crush. So the relationship is unclear. They're clearly, there's some sort of romantic attachment there. How far the attachment has been pursued is unclear, but it's there. At any rate, Laertes comes in. We doubt it nothing, heartily farewell. And now, Laertes, what's the news with you? You told us of some suit. What is it, Laertes? You cannot speak of reason to the Dane and lose your voice. What wouldst thou beg, Laertes? That shall not be my offer, nor thy asking. The head is more native to the heart, the hand more instrumental to the mouth, than is the throne of Denmark to thy father. What wouldst thou have, Laertes? So he's praising Laertes' father and saying he will get whatever he wants because of his father's relationship with him. Patronage. My dread lord, your leave and favor to return to France. Where is this? From whence, though willingly I came to Denmark to show my duty in your coronation, yet now I must confess that duty done, my thoughts and wishes bend again towards France, and bow then to your gracious leave and pardon. Have you your father's leave? What says Polonius? Hath, my lord, wrung from me by my slow leave, by laborsome petition, and at last, upon his will, I sealed my hard consent. I do beseech you, give him leave to go. Take thy fair hour, Laertes, time be thine, and thy best graces spend it at thy will. But now, my cousin Hamlet and my son. Okay, so the complexity of the whole situation, the chaos and disarray, is there in the court from the beginning. We have a country that has overthrown another country, taken its property, is now under the threat of invasion. So that's the chaos outside the kingdom. We have a king who is actually the brother of the deceased king, the father of Hamlet, now speaking of him as his cousin and his son all at once. We have chaotic relationships here. And given all of that, we can only imagine what's going through the young Hamlet's mind at this point. And I don't even know what would be going through a man's mind at that point, because it's such an unusual, difficult situation. And furthermore, he's away at university, so he is a young man, very young. Now my cousin Hamlet and my son, and then aside, we have little insight. Now there's a lot of asides here and a lot of soliloquies. Again, reinforcing Hamlet as a contemplative figure and heroic in that sense, but not really a man of action. The fact that he does more asides and more soliloquies suggests that he's thinking a lot. Here the aside: a little more than kin and less than kind. If he'd said this aloud, the king would know that he was hostile towards him. But the audience knows right away that Hamlet is very troubled by the whole state of affairs. How is it that the clouds still hang on you? What a stupid question. Not so, my lord, I am too much in the sun. The sun being a symbol of the king. Just like the planets revolve around the sun, the constellations, the courtiers surround the king, and he's why do you have clouds around you? I'm too much in the sun. I'm too much in the presence of the king, is what he's the veiled reference here. Yes.
So in my version, they have like in single quotations S-O-N, and I didn't know if that meant like he is too much, like in the sun as earlier he calls him.
Pun on that. Very interesting. It would be a play on words in both cases. And it would make sense written either way. So that's a different manuscript that has it written with a S-O-N rather than S-U-N. The manuscript that I have here from the Riverside Shakespeare has it as S-U-N, just like it is here on the screen. But if I'm too much in the sun, it's a pun, it's a play on words, cloud, sun. And in terms of delivery, it's the same. It would make sense if it were written with an O, quite frankly, and you'd be playing on the clouds versus sunny. So you can see why it would be difficult if you have varying manuscripts, for the editor to decide what's the right spelling here even. I will also say that Shakespeare, in his day, that orthography is not set in, and he writes even his own name at least 3 different ways. So it's not standardized per se. There's different ways of spelling words that even Shakespeare uses the same words and spells them differently occasionally. Anyway, the queen, of course, is troubled by this. She just wants him to be Mr. Sunny Ways, sunny days, be happy. Good Hamlet, cast thy nighted colour off, and let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark, as in my husband, your uncle, the king. Do not forever with thy veiled lids seek for thy noble father in the dust. Thou knowest 'tis common, all that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. Aye, madam, it is common. Now, common has multiple associations. It's not very noble. Can be meant by common as well, or it can be just, yes, it's the standard fair man. She means it in one way, he means it in the other. It is common. You're acting like a commoner. You're not seeing the nobility of my father. That's behind. He's always got there are little double entendres in everything that he says. He's a witty man. And we're going to see that with him throughout the play as well. Queen, if it be, why seems it so particular with thee? Seems, madam, nay, it is. I know not seems. 'Tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath, no, nor the fruitful river in the eye, nor the dejected haviour of the visage, together with all forms, moods, shapes of grief that can denote me truly. These indeed seem, for they are actions that a man might play, But I have that within which passes show. These but the trappings and suits of woe. Again, telling his mother there's an inner life to him that belies what you can see. He's a complicated character. And he's accusing her of hypocrisy, slightly here, very lightly. You can wear the robes of grief and wail and whatever in public and then move on, just like in the death of Ivan Illich, where everyone is feigning grief and move on. He's troubled as much by the fact that not only that his mother's married, but that his mother's moved on so quickly. Not troubled at all. That disturbs him. The reason for this is not because he loves his mother and envies his father and his uncle for the relationship that they have. It's more because of the relationship with his father that's been lost. I think that's the reasonable conclusion, if you're not a Freudian pervert. "'Tis sweet and commendable in your nature, Hamlet," says the king, "to give these mourning duties to your father. But you must know your father lost a father. That father lost his, and the survivor bound in filial obligation for some term to do obsequious sorrow. But to persevere in obstinate condolement is a course of impious stubbornness. 'Tis unmanly grief. It shows a will most incorrect to heaven, a heart unfortified, or mind impatient, an understanding simple and unschooled. For what we know must be, and is as common as any the most vulgar thing to sense. Why should we in our peevish opposition take it to heart?" So he's telling him off for being a a man lacking in virtue, being immature. He's insulting him a little bit. A little chiding going on here. Fie, 'tis a fault to heaven. And he gives a theological. It's not only that you're not accepting what has happened, it's that you're acting against God by not moving on and accepting the new reality. So he's appealing to God in this, which is probably doubly chafing, to put it mildly. 'Tis a fault to heaven, a fault against the dead, a fault to nature, to reason most absurd, whose common theme is death of fathers, and who still hath cried for the first course till he that died today. This must be so. We pray you, throw to earth this unprevailing woe, and think of us as of a father. For let the world take note, you are the most immediate to our throne, and with no less nobility of love than that which dearest father bears his son, do I impart toward you. For your intent in going back to school in Wittenberg is most retrograde to our desire, and we beseech you, bend you to remain here in the cheer and comfort of our eye, our chiefest courtier, cousin, and our son. So, unlike Laertes, who's just been dismissed to go back to France where he was, Hamlet is going to be enjoined not to go back to university in Wittenberg. Now, Wittenberg, let me say something about this, because it will explain much. What do you know about Wittenberg, if anything? Famous university in Germany. Old university, yes. Associated with the Protestant Reformation, with Martin Luther, who taught there, and with the Wittenberg door on which he nails the 95 Theses and so forth. Reformation begins there. It is a reformed city. And in Germany of the day, and it will be including in Shakespeare's day, Germany is not Germany at all. It's a state of duchies and princedoms and cities that have sovereignty, and they have minor governors over them, and each of them will be either Protestant or Catholic throughout the entire country. It'll be littered around. Some will be Catholic, some will be Protestant. And eventually they'll come to an agreement that whatever the king or the prince says is his faith, that will be that of his subjects. That's how it works in Germany. And Wittenberg is clearly a Protestant province and famous for being the seat of the Reformation. And Denmark has sent his son to study there. So he's Lutheran, okay? The whole 95 thesis nailed to the Wittenberg door is over the matter of indulgences. This is one of the matters, but chiefly the authority of Scripture. There's no mention of purgatory in Scripture. And while we're at it, there are all sorts of unbiblical practices the church is involved in that go against even church councils, etc. And the Pope's given authority, but what is the authority of the Pope if the Pope doesn't acknowledge the authority of Scripture? And so I must reason by Scripture, etc. You know all that. But in particular, the state of purgatory for a Protestant is the point of that needs to be brought to bear on this text, and explains Hamlet's lack of action, because the ghost of his father is going to claim to be in torment because he's in purgatory. What does a Protestant think of a man or a ghost who claims to be in purgatory, which he doesn't think exists? Or his theological teaching says there is no such place. But now his father's in front of him in a ghost-like form and insists that that is the case. If you're somebody who thinks that your faith is dependent on theological truth, and if you act against that, your soul is at risk, how do you respond to a ghost who says he's in purgatory, who is clearly your father? What do you do there? Because you know that the devil can cloak himself as an angel of light and can present himself as a ghost, can deceive him. He worries that his soul is in peril. This will prevent him from acting immediately. Whatever his father says here, he's not going to take it as it is. He's going to be very skeptical about what he hears. At the same time, what his father will say to him, we're not there yet, but we will be in Act 1, Scene 4, what his father says to him, he thinks is true. He suspects it already. In fact, he immediately thinks this is what happened. But he's worried that the truth that's revealed is going to lead him down a path of action which he should not take. That's the issue. Same thing with Macbeth. Think of how Macbeth and Banquo receive the prophecies of the three witches. They receive it very differently. Do I act on it immediately, or do I, okay, well, if it's true and I believe, then I'll just wait for that to play out? How will you act in response to what you know is coming in the future, or the current state of affairs? That's a different question. Right? And that's where Hamlet is caught. It's a theological conundrum as much as anything. Because otherwise, since his uncle murdered his father, the path is clear. Run him through. Kill him. He's not worried about his own life. He's worried about justice. He's not worried that if he stabs his uncle and kills him, that somebody might come in and kill him for killing the king. That's not, it never enters his speech. It's not part of his concerns at all. It is more than that. But he says, for your intent to go back to Wittenberg, it's most retrograde to our desire. So difference then, and foil, we have another foil for Hamlet, not just Fortinbras, but Laertes. So these three young men are foils for one another and are compared and contrasted throughout, and will constitute part of the subplot, really. Anyway, the queen is very happy with this. Son's not going to be sent away. Let not thy mother lose her prayers, Hamlet. I pray thee, stay with us. Go not to Wittenberg. And Hamlet has no choice in the matter. I shall in all my best obey you, madam. Doesn't say it to the king, by the way. Interesting. The king's in charge. I shall obey you, madam. Do you want to have a little bit of barb there? Like, obey you, madam. And, raise the emphasis so I'm not obeying him, I'm obeying you. Tension between the two? It's possible. Because he directs it to her. It's an odd thing to do. They both said it. He's the one who's the king. But he says, direct it to his mother, I'll obey you. As his mother, not him as his father, which he's claimed he is. So that's there in the scene. There's a lot to read into it. There's a lot for an actor to sink his teeth into as far as motivations. And it's given away by the speech, though. Don't read in Freudian nonsense and other motivations. Read what is you can discern from the text. And then you can speculate and go beyond a little bit, but don't go too far. Anyway, King, why? 'Tis a loving and a fair reply. Be as ourself in Denmark. Madam, come. This gentle and unforced accord of Hamlet sits smiling to my heart, in grace whereof no jocund health that Denmark drinks today, but the great cannon to the cloud shall tell, and the kings rouse the heaven shall breathe again, bespeaking earthly thunder. Come away, and then the trumpets, out he goes. All are left but Hamlet. Hamlet left alone on stage. Now, famous first soliloquy in response to his agreement to stay. He is not a happy man. Melancholic, despondent, all sorts of things. How do you play this character who has so many different facets of him? And you need to capture those to the audience. This is a rich, thick character. Oh, that when everyone's on stage, then he acts differently. When they're off stage, differently again. Complex character, the audience is aware of the complexity because we're privy to his thoughts, which are given to us when he said. And if you're the Hamlet character, you now stride upstage, go right to the front, and speak not to the audience, but to because if you look at the audience, you're acknowledging an audience there. You're not supposed to acknowledge an audience. You're looking at the back of the room, speaking to the air as if thinking. But if you're speaking in terms of projection, project as if you're speaking to the person at the back of the room. Anyway, oh, that this too sallied flesh would melt, thaw and resolve itself into a dew. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. O God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on it. Ah, fie. 'Tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. That it should come to this, but 2 months dead, nay, not so much, not 2, so excellent a king, that was to this Hyperion to a satyr, so loving to my mother that he might not beteem the winds of heaven visit her face too roughly. Heaven and earth must I remember. Why, she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on, and yet, within a month, let me not think on it. Frailty thy name is woman. A little month, or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe, all tears. Why, she, even she, oh God, a beast that wants discourse of reason, would have mourned longer. Married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears had left the flushing in her galled eyes, she married. O most wicked speed, to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets, it is not, nor it cannot come to good, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. Wondering what Hamlet thinks? And it's the speed of the events and it's his mother's response that particularly troubles him. And he's going to have multiple concerns. But one of them that really, really bothers him is his mother's response, because he knows how much his father loved his mother and how much she loved him. So he's not only mourning the loss of a father, he is seeing the inconstancy of love played out in front of him. It can switch its gaze very quickly. Very quickly. There's no sense of mourning. Were you really attached to my father? Well, you acted like she hung on his gaze every word as if she was feeding from him. And he treated her like gold. He wouldn't even let the air rub her cheek so that she was, her skin was chafed in any way. He was protective. He was good. He was very good to her. And now she marries immediately, within a month, to a man who's nothing like as good as his father. Nothing like as good. And she's just going to carry on as before. Now, it's not only that he's lost a father, he is disenchanted about love's constancy. That's also important, because it will bear on his relationship with the girl that he loves, and he'll think about her in relation to this as well. The way your parents act is going to affect you as a child in relation to everyone and everything. This is very realistic of Shakespeare, to portray it so. If you were Hamlet, you would also be chafed, to put it mildly, and not know what to do. He receives it so badly, he would like to take his own life. I don't want to live. And this world is what? It's an unweeded garden that grows to seed things rank and gross in nature, possess it merely. It's only a weeded garden. There are no flowers anymore. There's nothing good in the world. That's how he starts the play. Our first insight into his character and what he really thinks. He sees only evil in the world. That's what it is. All the good was in his father and in the relationship of his parents, which has now been totally contradicted, not only by the death. That's not the big deal. It's his mother's actions. It really bothers him. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that he is amorous towards his mother. This is an absurd reading. Like, just the plain reading of the text, right from the outset, shows us the problem for Hamlet. Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo come in, and they acquaint Hamlet with what they've just seen. And Horatio, greeted by Hamlet as his dear friend, "I'm very glad to see you." To Bernardo, good even, sir. "But what in faith make you from Wittenberg?" To Horatio, "A truant disposition, good my lord. I would not hear your enemy say so." He loves Horatio, and he would defend his friend Horatio. "I would not hear your enemy say so. Nor shall you do my ear that violence to make it truster of your own report against yourself. I know you are no truant. But what is your affair in Elsinore? We'll teach you to drink deep ere you depart," because in Denmark we like our beer. "My lord, I came to see your father's funeral. I prithee do not mock me, fellow student. I think it was to see my mother's wedding." "Indeed, my lord, it followed hard upon. Thrift, Horatio, the funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables. Would I had met my dearest foe in heaven, or ever I had seen that day, Horatio, my father. Methinks I see my father." "Where, my lord?" "In my mind's eye, Horatio. I saw him once. 'Twas a goodly king. It was a man, take him for all in all, I shall not look upon his like again." Deep reflections. It removes the personal father-son attachment. Here's a man, he's a unique human being. He's part of the earth. I will never see a man like him again. Very fitting, very sane, very wise, very sober judgment. "My lord, I think I saw him yesternight." "Saw who?" "My lord, the king, your father." "The king, my father! Season your admiration for a while with an attent ear till I may deliver upon the witness of these gentlemen this marvel to you. 2 nights together had these gentlemen, Marcellus and Bernardo, on their watch in the dead waste and middle of the night, being thus encountered. A figure like your father, armed at point exactly, cap a pie, appears before him, and with solemn march goes slow and stately by them. Thrice he walked by their oppressed and fear-surprised eyes within his truncheon's length, whilst they, distilled almost to jelly with the act of fear, stand dumb and speak not to him. This to me in dreadful secrecy in part they did, and I with them the 3rd night kept the watch, where as they had delivered, both in time, form of the thing, Each word made true and good, the apparition comes. I know you, I knew your father. These hands are not more like. But where was this? My Lord, upon the platform where we watch. Did you not speak to it? My Lord, I did. But answer made it none. Yet once methought, it lifted up its head and did address itself to motion, like as it would speak. But even then the morning cock crew aloud, and at the sound it shrunk in haste away and vanished from our sight. "'Tis very strange," said Hamlet. "As I do live, my honored lord, 'tis true. And we did think it writ down in our duty to let you know on it. Indeed, sirs, but this troubles me. Hold you the watch tonight?" "We do, my lord." "Armed, say you?" "Armed, my lord." "From top to toe, my lord?" "From head to foot." "Then saw you not his face?" "Oh, yes, my lord, he wore his beaver up." "What? Looked he frowningly?" "A countenance more in sorrow than in anger." "Pale or red?" "Pale, nay, very pale." "And fixed his eyes upon you?" "Most constantly." "I would I had been there. It would have much amazed you." Very like, very like." "Stayed it long?" "While one with moderate haste might tell 100. Longer, but even I saw it." So they decide that they're going to go and see them themselves. Act 1, Scene 4, they will pick that up. In between, very briefly, in the interim, Act 1, Scene 3, we have the household of Polonius, and we reintroduce ourselves to Laertes and meet for the first time the lovely Ophelia. Not yet entered into the play, but an important character, famous Ophelia. Laertes giving leave to his sister because he's going back to France. My necessaries are embarked. Farewell, and sister, as the winds give benefit and conveys assistant, do not sleep, but let me hear from you. Write me immediately. They're very close. Close brother and sister. Do you doubt that? For Hamlet and the trifling of his favor hold it a fashion and a toy in blood, a violet in the youth of primy nature, forward, not permanent, sweet, nor lasting, the perfume and suppliance of a minute, no more. No more but so? What's the advice of the brother? Hamlet's taken a fancy for you. He is a prince. Princes are a bit above your station in life. He's not going to marry you. He will like you for a while, but that he's going to move on. He's going to be married off to royal blood somewhere. Don't fall for Hamlet. But he acts like he loves me. Yes, and he may think that he loves you, but he will not be able to marry you, and his love will fade just like the seasons change. That's the advice of the older brother to her, effectively. And she's a young maiden who's very naive and very affectionate and is attached to Hamlet. Counsel, though, no more but so, 'tis think it no more. For nature crescent does not grow alone in thews and bulk. But as this temple waxes, the inward service of the mind and soul grows wide withal. Perhaps he loves you now, and now no soil nor cottle doth besmirch the virtue of his will. But you must fear his greatness weighed, his will is not his own. For he himself is subject to his birth. He may not, as unvalued persons do, carve for himself. For on his choice depends the safety and health of this whole state, and therefore must his choice be circumscribed unto the voice and yielding of that body whereof he is the head. It will be Denmark that decides who he will marry, not Hamlet. The king has two bodies. Here's the future king. Denmark will choose for Hamlet who his wife will be. It's not going to be a love match. It's going to be an advantageous political match, and he will have to suffer it and endure it. Such is his state. And that means don't you get attached to him, because you're not going to be the one that he's required to marry. So if you do have a romantic alliance of some sort, know that it's going to end very badly for you. You'll be heartbroken. And if there are children, they're going to be bastards. Problem, right? He's giving her wise counsel. Then if he says he loves you, it fits your wisdom so far to believe it as he in his particular act and place may give his saying deed, which is no further than the main voice of Denmark goes withal. Then weigh what loss your honor may sustain if with too credent ear you list his songs, or lose your heart, or your chaste treasure open to his unmastered importunity. Don't sleep with him. Fear it, Ophelia, fear it, my dear sister, and keep you in the rear of your affection, out of the shot and danger of desire. The chariest maid is prodigal enough if she unmask her beauty to the moon. Under the influences of love, which is inconstant, don't be moved by that. Use your reason. Let your reason overrule your passions. This is just wise counsel here. And her response to this, I shall, the effect of this good lesson, keep as watchman to my heart. But good my brother, do not, as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, whilst, like a puffed and reckless libertine, himself the primrose path of dalliance treads, and reeks not his own reed, doesn't listen to his own counsel. So you tell me to be chaste and wait, and say, don't you go around then cavorting with other maidens and so forth. And give me the ungracious pastors the steep and thorny way to heaven, while you are dallying with the roses without thorns, none of that stuff. So back and forth. Again, you can imagine the dialogue between brother and sister here. Now Polonius comes in, and Polonius is a counselor, but he's a bit of a buffoon. It's funny. And it's suitable that Claudius has Polonius as his counselor. And Hamlet doesn't think much of him. He has his measure. But now Polonius comes. I stay too long, for here my father comes. A double blessing is a double grace. Occasion smiles upon a second leave. Yet here, Laertes, and he's a bit of a blowhard as well. He wants to give everybody his wisdom all the time. Yet here, Laertes, aboard, for shame. The wind sits in the shoulder of your sail, and you are stayed for. There, laying his hand on Laertes' head, my blessing with thee. And these few precepts, because he's just about to go, and these few precepts, with thy memory look thou character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast, and their adoption tried, grapple them unto thy soul with hoops of steel, but do not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new hatched unfledged courage. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear it that the opposed may beware of thee. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy, rich, not gaudy, for the apparel oft proclaims the man, and they in France of the best rank and station are of a most select and generous chief in that. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulleth the edge of husbandry. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Farewell, my blessing season this in thee. Wise counsel, but he's a bit of a blowhard in spite of that. How you play it is up to you, again, if you're the Polonius figure there. And then out he goes, takes his leave and goes on. Now, what will follow, and I'm not going to spend any more time on this because I'm taking far too much time in the beginning of a very long play. Polonius will then engage with Ophelia and try, now he's got the double position as well. He's her father, and yet he also knows that his daughter is connected to Hamlet. Now, the brother who has her best interest in heart just says, stay clear of him. Her father, who's more of a politician, wants to use her daughter's connection with Hamlet to test him out a little bit, which is contemptible, quite frankly. There's a bit of, well, I'm going to use all the information I can to gain favor with the king, and that includes his and he counsels her to stick close to So now you have the problem of two counselors, the loving brother and the loving father not acting very lovingly in his counsel. Because for her sake, she ought to dissociate herself, at least in her affections, from Hamlet. By all means, you can talk to him, whatever, but don't give your heart to him. Polonius's advice is to stick around him. Immediately shows the disjuncture, and again, if you want to see foils between Laertes and his father, you get that right away. And that will cause problems, because Hamlet is going to see through the young Ophelia's actions and her motivations for it, because you can't, when you're naive and you're truthful and you're like this, your heart's on your sleeve. You can see people, they give it away. It's on their faces. They're not very good at deceit. So if she's acting like her father's daughter and is serving his purposes, Hamlet's going to see it right away. And he does see it right away. It's a problem. So let's go on to the next scene. They're back in the ramparts watching, and the ghost enters. "Look, my lord, it comes." And Hamlet's response, "Angels and ministers of grace, defend us. Be thou a spirit of health or goblin damned. Bring with thee airs from heaven or blasts from hell. Be thy intents wicked or charitable. Thou comest in such a questionable shape that I will speak to thee. I'll call thee Hamlet. King, father, royal Dane, oh, answer me. Let me not burst in ignorance, but tell. Let me not burst in ignorance, but tell why thy canonized bones, hearsed in death, have burst their cerements. Why the sepulchre, wherein we saw thee quietly inurned, hath oped his ponderous and marble jaws to cast thee up again. What may this mean? That thou, dead corpse, again in complete steel revisits thus the glimpses of the moon, making night hideous, and we, fools of nature, so horridly to shake our disposition with thoughts beyond the reaches of our souls. Say, why is this? Wherefore? What should we do? And then the ghost beckons Hamlet. It beckons you to go away with it, as if it had some impartment to desire to you alone. Look with what courteous action it waves you to a more removed ground. But do not go with it. No, by no means. It will not speak. Then I will follow it. So he goes against his friend's best advice here. Do not, my lord. Why? What should be the fear? I do not set my life at a pin's fee. And for my soul, what can it do to that, being a thing immortal as itself? It waves me forth again, I'll follow it. What if it tempt you toward the flood, my lord? Or to the dreadful summit of the cliff that beetles o'er his base into the sea, and there assumes some other horrible form that might deprive your sovereignty of reason and draw you into madness. Think of it. The very place puts toys of desperation without more motive into every brain that looks so many fathoms to the sea and hears it roar beneath. It waves me still. Go on, I'll follow thee. Will not heed counsel on this. So off he goes and is ruled by it. And then scene 5, the ghost and Hamlet alone. Wilt thou lead me, said Hamlet, speak, I'll go no further. And now he finally speaks. Mark me. I will. My hour is almost come when I to sulphurous and tormenting flames must render up myself. Alas, poor ghost, pity me not, but lend thy serious hearing to what I shall unfold. Speak, I am bound to hear. So art thou to revenge when thou shalt hear. What? I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fast in fires, till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt and purged away. But that I am forbid to tell the secrets of my prison house, I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul, freeze thy young blood, make thy two eyes like stars, start from their spheres, thy knotted and combined locks to part, and each particular hair to stand on end, like quills upon the fearful porcupine. But this eternal blazon must not be to ears of flesh and blood. List, O list, if thou didst ever thy dear father love. O God! Revenge this foul and most unnatural murder. Murder most foul, as in the best it is, but this most foul, strange and unnatural. Haste me to know it, that I with wings swift as meditation or the thoughts of love may sweep to my revenge. I find thee apt, and duller shouldst thou be than the fat weed that roots itself in east on Lethe wharf. Wouldst thou not stir in this? Now, Hamlet, here, 'tis given out, sleeping in my orchard. A serpent stung me. So the whole ear of Denmark is by a forged process of my death rankly abused. But know, thou noble youth, the serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears the crown. Where's the crown? Where is this? O my prophetic soul, my uncle, I, that incestuous, that adulterate beast, with witchcraft of his wits, with traitorous gifts, O wicked wit and gifts that have the power so to seduce, won to his shameful lust the will of my most seeming virtuous queen. O Hamlet, what a falling off was there from me, whose love was of that dignity that it went hand in hand even with the vow I made to her in marriage, and to decline upon a wretch whose natural gifts were poor to those of mine. But virtue, as it never will be moved, though lewdness courted in a shape of heaven, so lust, though to a radiant angel linked, will sate itself in a celestial bed and prey on garbage. But soft, methinks I scent the morning air. Brief let me be. Sleeping within my orchard, my custom always of the afternoon. Upon my secure hour, thy uncle stole with juice of cursed Habana in a vial, and in the porches of my ears did pour the leprous distilment, whose effect holds such an enmity with the blood of man, that swift as quicksilver it courses through the natural gates and alleys of the body, and with a sudden vigor it doth posset and curd like eager droppings into milk, and thin and wholesome blood. So did it mine, and in most instant tetter barked about, most Lazar-like with vile and loathsome crust, all my smooth body. Thus was I, sleeping by a brother's hand, of life, of crown, of queen at once dispatched, cut off even in the blossoms of my sin, unhouselled, disappointed, unannaled, no reckoning made, but sent to my account with all my imperfections on my head. Oh horrible, most horrible. He's not been prepared for death. He's not actually been given divine unction. No, so this is interesting. In a Lutheran understanding, he does not need to receive a priestly forgiveness of his sins before he dies. He has faith in Christ. When he says he's in his sins, he hasn't done anything particularly wrong. He hadn't, unless it's in relation to killing Norway. That could be possible, I guess. That might be in mind here, but there's no particular sin that he has in mind. It's simply that he was not prepared for that. He had not repented of the sins that he'd done that day, and therefore he's kept in a place where his sins are held against him. Let not the royal bed of Denmark be a couch for luxury and damned incest. But howsomever thou pursues this act, taint not thy mind, nor let thy soul contrive against thy mother aught. Leave her to heaven. And to those thorns that in her bosom lodge it, to prick and sting her. Fare thee well at once. The glowworm shows the matin to be near, and gins to pale his effectual fire. Adieu, 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 remember me. So in response to this, as I said, he's talking about an existence where he is not in heaven and he's not in hell per se. He's being tormented because he's not confessed his sins and he died in that state. He's not received divine unction, the rite of death that would be acknowledged in a Catholic understanding, not for Protestants. But he says it to his son, who he sent to Wittenberg to study. Contradicts his view, theologically speaking. What does Hamlet make of this? What does he make of it? O all you host of heaven, O earth, what else? And shall I couple hell? In others, shall I ally myself with hell? It doesn't say purgatory, but shall I be an agent for the damned? Oh, fie, hold my heart, and you, my sinews, grow not instant old, but bear me stiffly up. Remember thee, I, thou poor ghost, whiles memory holds a seat in this distracted globe. Remember thee? Yea, from the table of my memory I'll wipe away all trivial fond records, all saws of books, all forms, all pressures past that youth and observation copy there. In thy commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain, unmixed with baser matter. Yes, by heaven, O most pernicious woman, O villain, smiling damned villain, my tables, meet it is I set it down, that one may smile and be a villain. At least I am sure it may be so in Denmark. And then he writes down, so, uncle, there you are. Now to my word. It is adieu, adieu, remember me. I have sworn it. My lord, Lord Hamlet, Horatio, Marcellus come in, and so forth. And then he acquaints them with this, what he has just seen. And the response to this is incredulity on Horatio's part, who is also a schoolmate of his at Wittenberg. What will he make of this? What's Horatio going to? What say? Would heart of man once think it, but you'll be secret? I, by heaven, my lord, there's never a villain dwelling in all Denmark, but he's an arrant knave. Denmark's full of bad men. There needs no ghost, my lord, come from the grave to tell us this. Why, right, you are in the right. And so, without more circumstance at all, I hold it fit that we shake hands and part. You as your business and desire shall point you, for every man hath business and desire such as it is. And for my own poor part, I will go pray. These are but wild and whirling words, my lord. Yes, by St. Patrick. But there is, Horatio, and much offense too. Touching this vision here, it is an honest ghost. That let me tell you, for your desire to know what is between us, or master it as you may. And now, good friends, as you are friends, scholars and soldiers, give me one more poor request. What is it, my lord? We will never make known what you have seen tonight. My lord, we will not, nay, but swear it. In faith, my lord, not I, and Marcel, nor I, my lord, in faith. Upon my sword. We have sworn, my lord, already. Indeed, upon my sword, indeed. And then the ghost cries under the stage, swear. Ha ha, boy, sayest thou so? Art thou there, true penny? Come on, you hear this fellow in the cellarage. Consent to swear. Propose the oath, my lord, never to speak of this that you have seen. Swear by my sword. Swear. Hic et ubique, here and everywhere. Then we'll shift our ground. Come hither, gentlemen, and lay your hands upon my sword. Swear by my sword, never to speak of that which you've heard. And then the ghost beneath, swear by his sword. Well said, old mole, canst work of the earth so fast. A worthy pioneer. One more remove, good friends. Oh, day and night, but this is wondrous strange. And therefore, as a stranger, give it welcome. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. But come, here as before, never, so help you mercy, how strange or odd some'er I bear myself, as I perchance here after shall think me to put an antic disposition on. that you at such times seeing me never shall, with arms encumbered thus or this head shake, or by pronouncing of some doubtful phrase as, well, well, we know, or we could, and if we would, or if we list to speak, there be, and if they might, or such ambiguous giving out, to note that you know aught of me. This do swear. He says, I'm going to start acting crazy from now on. Put on an antic disposition. And he says to Horatio that there's more here than your philosophy can comprehend. And yet he lives in that reality. There is something here which he thinks is true and yet contradicts his philosophy, his theology. More here. Comments or questions at this stage? I got a couple minutes left. I'll get into Act 2. But I think this is what leads him to inaction. This encounter that he does not know how, it doesn't compute. He thinks it's true, and yet the state that the ghost is in is, he thinks it's a hellish place. He's under the earth. Speaks from underneath. And yet he's allied with it. What does that mean for him? To be allied with a demon. Does he really want to do that? The answer is not normally, no. Not if he values his soul. He doesn't want to be the demon, a demon's lackey in these things. Yet he speaks the truth and he wants revenge. So what does he do then? Put yourself in his shoes. I think you can understand why he's not rushing to immediate action. Even though he's not going to go away from this acting like he doesn't believe it. He firmly believes everything that he just heard. So Act 2, Scene 1 then. Hearing nothing. Old Polonius with Reynaldo. I'll skip over that. Talking about his son and his daughter. And now Ophelia walks in. How now, Ophelia? What's the matter? Oh, my Lord, I have been so affrighted. With what in the name of God? My Lord is as I was sewing in my closet. Lord Hamlet with his doublet all unbraced. He's got his shirt undone. No hat upon his head. His stockings fouled, ungartered. So the socks are held up by garters at the time. Otherwise they fall down. They don't have elastic in them. So his socks have fallen down. He looks like he's not got himself together, to put it mildly. Pale as his shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous in purport, as if he'd been loosed out of hell, to speak of horrors, he comes before me. Mad for thy love? My Lord, I do not know, but truly I do fear it. What said he? He took me by the wrist and held me hard. Then goes he to the length of all his arm, and with his other hand, thus o'er his brow, he falls to such perusal of my face as it would draw it. Long stayed he so. At last, a little shaking of mine arm, and thrice his head, thus waving up and down, he raised a sigh so piteous and profound as it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being. That done, he lets me go. And with his head over his shoulder turned, he seemed to find his way without his eyes. For out of doors he went without their helps, and to the last bended their light on me. At the end, he's walking into the room looking at her as he goes. It's strange, like he's acting like a kook. Come, go with me. I will go seek the king. This is the very ecstasy of love, whose violent property foredoes itself, and leads the will to desperate undertakings as oft as any passions under heaven that doth afflict our natures. I am sorry. What, have you given him any hard words of late? No, my good Lord. But as you did command, I did repel his letters and denied his access to me. That hath made him mad. I am sorry that with better heed and judgment I had not coated him. I feared he did but trifle and mean to rack thee. But beshrow my jealousy. By heaven, it is as proper to our age to cast beyond ourselves in our opinions, as it is common for the younger sort to lack discretion. Come, go we to the king, this must be known, which, being kept close, might move more grief to hide than hate to utter love. Come, out they go. And acquaint him with this. Hamlet, of course, at this point, is playing her, because he knows the word's going to get back. He's acting, and the acting is going to, he's not just a character, he's the son of the king. His every action has political implications. He's not allowed to have a private life. This is what we need to understand here. Kings do not, and royal houses do not have private lives. They try to have private lives, and who can blame them? But every act that they do has an importance for the state, especially when they actually are monarchs. Not like today where they're, placeholders and they have this sort of they have no real power. They do have power in his day. So his actions must be revealed to the king. And now Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, these famous characters as well, come into the scene. I can't skip over it. Welcome, dear Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Moreover, that we much did long to see you, the need we have to use you to provoke, did provoke our hasty sending. These are friends of Hamlet's from school, from boyhood. Something have you heard of Hamlet's transformation, so call it, sith nor the exterior nor the inward man resembles what it was. What it should be, more than his father's death, that thus hath put him so much from the understanding of himself, I cannot dream of. I entreat you both, that being of so young days brought up with him, and sith so neighboured to his youth and behaviour, that you vouchsafe your own rest here in our court some little time, so by your companies to draw him on to pleasures, and to gather so much as from occasion you may glean, whether aught to us unknown afflicts him thus. That opt lies within our remedy. I want you to spy on your friend, because you're his friends. Queen, good gentleman, he hath much talked of you, and sure I am two men there is not living to whom he more adheres. If it will please you to show us so much gentry and goodwill as to expend your time with us a while for the supply and profit of our hope, your visitation shall receive such thanks as fits a king's remembrance. And they are very pleased. They're going to get court favors, wealth, perhaps titles. You're doing the king a favor. This is no small thing. They're very happy to be directed by this. Now Polonius comes in and informs of nothing other than the ambassadors of Norway. Important. May seem like a distraction. It's not an unimportant distraction. Remember, Norway, outside the whole theater of action here, is nonetheless going to come in, and it's looming there the whole time. The ambassadors from Norway, my good lord, are joyfully returned. Thou hast still been the father of good news. Have I, my lord? I assure, my good liege, I hold my duty as I hold my soul, both to my God and to my gracious king. And I do think, or else this brain of mine hunts not the trail of policy so sure as it hath used to do, that I have found the very cause of Hamlet's lunacy. Oh, speak of that. That I do long to hear. Give first admittance to the ambassadors. My news shall be the fruit of that great feast. Thyself do grace to them and bring them in. He tells me, my dear Gertrude, he hath found the head and source of all your son's distemper. I doubt it is no other but the main, his father's death and our or hasty marriage. Or hasty marriage, she says. Polonius comes with Voltaman and Cornelius, who had been sent off, the ambassadors. Well, we shall sift him. Welcome, my good friend. Say, Voltaman, what from our brother Norway? Most fair return of greetings and desires. Upon our first, he sent out to suppress his nephew's levies, which to him appeared to be a preparation against the Polack. So he wasn't going to fight here. He was preparing to go into Poland for an invasion. But better looked into, he truly found it was against your highness, whereat grieved that so his sickness, age, and impotence was falsely borne in hand, sends out arrests on Fortinbras, which he in brief obeys, receives rebuke from Norway, and in fine makes vow before his uncle never more to give the assay of arms against your majesty. Whereon old Norway, overcome with joy, gives him 3,000 crowns in annual fee, and is commissioned to employ those soldiers so levied as before against the Polack, with an entreaty herein further shown, giving a paper, that it may please you to give quiet pass through your dominions for this enterprise on such regards of safety and allowance as herein are set down. It likes us well. Okay, so that has apparently been resolved. He's going to go march through Denmark on the way to Poland. And Poland at this point is all the way into what we would now call Germany, because Poland swells and shrinks over the course of time, just like Germany does as well. Poland is very near to Denmark. Polish is even spoken in areas in East Germany now. Well, these days as well as Russian, but never mind. That's another later iteration of the challenge. And anyway, but he's very pleased with that, and he's acquainted with the what goes on with the daughter. And he reads from the letter which he has given to his beloved Ophelia. Doubt thou the stars are fire, doubt that the sun doth move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love. O dear Ophelia, I am ill at these numbers. I have not art to reckon my groans. I'm ill at these numbers. What does he mean by the numbers? He means the meter. I'm not a very good poet. I have not art to reckon my groans, but that I love thee best, oh, most best, believe it, adieu. Thine evermore, most dear lady, whilst this machine is to him, Hamlet. This in obedience hath my daughter shown me, and more above hath his solicitings as they fell out of by time, by means and place, all given to mine ear. But how hath she received his love? What do you think of me? As of a man faithful and honorable, I would fain prove so. But what might you think when I had seen this hot love on the wing, as I perceived it, I must tell you that, before my daughter told me, what might you, or my dear majesty your queen here think, if I had played the deck or table book, or given my heart a winking, mute and dumb, or looked upon this love with idle sight, what might you think? No, I went round to work, and my young mistress thus I did bespeak, Lord Hamlet is a prince out of thy star. This must not be. And then I prescripts gave her that she should lock herself from his resort, admit no messengers, receive no tokens, which done she took the fruits of my advice, and he, repelled, a short tale to make, fell into a sadness, then into a fast, thence to a watch, thence into a weakness, thence to a lightness, and by this declension into the madness wherein now he raves, and all we mourn for. Do you think it is this? It may be, very like. Hath there been such a time, I would fain know that I positively said, 'tis so, that it proved otherwise, not that I know. Points to his head and shoulder, take this from this, if this be otherwise. If circumstances lead me, I will find where truth is hid, though it were hid indeed within the center, etc. So he's going to find it out, and now Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will be brought in, and Hamlet is going to then play with Polonius in the speeches that follow, and you will notice that Hamlet at this point speaks like a man without blank verse and so forth, speaking like a commoner, lost his mind, etc., etc. I guess I have to leave off here for now. We'll pick it up next time in Act 2, Scene 2, and we're going to go through the entire play. We'll get there. Trust me. We'll see you then.